Morning, everybody. We're just going to give a couple more minutes just to let everyone get logged on okay. I just wanted to check that everybody can hear me. So raise your hand or put something in the chat just so I know that we're coming through loud and clear. Otherwise, just another minute or two and then we'll get started. Good morning to those who just joined us. We're just going to give it one more minute, make sure everyone's okay and logged on. I know these things can take some time sometimes, and then we'll get started. Okay, let's go. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our next instalment of our how-to webinar series. Throughout the series, we are covering a range of topics that look all across the online selling process. We will share a list of the rest of the upcoming webinars that we have. We've still got a few more to go throughout the series, so make sure you can join into those. There's been some great things that we're going to cover. Just to introduce myself, I'm Lorna Lever, one of the engagement managers here at GS1 UK, and today I am joined by our fantastic speaker, Håkan Thyr, who is one of the global marketplace, the guys at Fruugo. He is the Chief Revenue Officer there, and so he's going to go through some great session which will look at practical advice and tips to help you sustain and grow your business. So he's going to take a look at how Fruugo is going to help you sell into new markets, what actions you need to take to get started on Fruugo, how to replicate the sales results of successful sellers, and also what cross-border trade is like at the time of COVID-19. So we just need to run through a quick bit of housekeeping before I begin. There's going to be a formal part of the webinar which should last around 25-30 minutes, and then we're going to follow up with a dedicated Q&A session. So we'd love you to interact throughout it, so make sure you use the chat function to get any questions over, and then we'll put them over to Håkan at the end of the session. We're also going to record it and make sure that this is available to you both on our website and also send an email to you with the recording at the end of this session, probably via email by tomorrow morning. Just to be aware, we're going to mute your microphones throughout the webinar just to avoid some background noise. So enough from me. Let me pass you over to Håkan.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. So yeah, my name is Håkan Thyr. I am Chief Revenue Officer at Fruugo. So what I'm going to do today is give you a quick overview of Fruugo, our model, and kind of how we help solve some of the more common problems with cross-border trade. I'm going to walk you through a case study from one of our sellers that have expanded globally with us. And then, as Lorna said, I'm going to take a look at what trading has been like through the COVID-19 period. and kind of share some experiences from sellers as well. So let's see if we can get, there we go. All right. So yeah, making cross-border trade easy is kind of what we do. So Fruugo was built from the ground up to address some of the more common problems around cross-border trade. Originally founded in Finland, so dealing kind of with the local area problems there, where you have multiple languages, multiple currencies, different tax regulations, and all that. Got acquired by a UK company some years back, and has now turned into a international marketplace with local sites in 46 countries. So in terms of what some of the things we address, so obviously language barriers are one of the first and biggest hurdles you encounter. And so what we do is we use machine translation from a couple of different engines to translate your content into 28 different languages at this point. And yes, it's machine translation, which is never going to be as good as a human native speaker translation, but it is good enough to give consumers the information they need to transact, which is kind of the most important part. Fruugo's model is fundamentally based on driving search traffic directly to your products. So we spend a lot of money with paid search, predominantly with Google, to make sure that we drive targeted traffic from search engines directly to the product. So basically, if there is someone looking for your products, we are likely to find them and present them to you. Obviously, this needs to be done in each country. So we run campaigns per country, per retailer, to make sure that we drive as much traffic as possible. If you're going to localize the site, it's important to obviously have local currency, but also to support local payment methods. So as you know, if you're based in the UK, it's easy to have the perception that the whole world uses credit cards, which is certainly not true. Even within the EU, there are countries where the most common e-commerce payment method is a bank transfer. So credit cards don't even figure in the top 3. So to make sure that consumers get the local experience that they want, and to again drive conversion rates, we add support for the local payment methods in each locale. We also handle the currency conversions, so you don't need to keep track of foreign exchange rates. You send us your products in a single language, obviously, and also a single currency. So if you're based in the UK, you send us in pound sterling. We will convert that to each local currency, and you get paid in sterling. So if there's a currency fluctuation, we take that risk. We handle customer service first line, and also as importantly, you get a dedicated account manager, so you have someone you can call up and talk to if you have any questions, which if you're familiar with some of the larger marketplaces, can be a struggle to get help from a human. So what does localized globally mean? Well, so this is a screenshot of a product on the UK site. So as you'd expect, everything on the site navigation is in English. The product price is in sterling. You see the most common payment methods available to you, just like you would expect. Now, if we look at the same product on the Dutch site, everything is in Dutch. You get euros pricing. You also get local payment methods. So Ideal, for example, is the most commonly used payment method in the Netherlands, which would be pointless in the UK because no one uses it. but it's available in the Netherlands. So as you see, it's a completely localized experience for the same product. And in this case, it's actually a German seller that has submitted their products in German, and it's been translated and converted into sterling as well. So that is kind of what we mean by a localized experience. All right, so some numbers to kind of give you a better understanding of what we do. So we're a rapidly growing marketplace. We're growing over 100% year on year for the last 3 years. We added 14 new countries in terms of countries where we have a local site last year, and we're continuing to add countries as we go along. I think this is arguably the most important number to remember about our model is that 85% of the sales on Fruugo cross a border. So if you launch on Fruugo, you can expect your local country to be a substantial part of what you do, but the majority of your sales will be cross-border. Currently, we have about 20 countries where we're whitelisted with Google, and what that means is that when we launch your products, we don't have to deal with things like getting ratings up and things like that. We can start selling much more quickly. And we currently have about 1,000 sellers live and growing rapidly as well. So in terms of where we perform the best, so these are kind of the top 10 countries from last year. So UK and Switzerland are virtually neck and neck for being the biggest country. We also do well in Nordics, and then the usual suspects, if you will, US, France, Germany, Australia as well. So it's a couple of interesting things. I think, well, first of all, there are several countries on here that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So the Nordics and Switzerland do really well. I think that's largely because they're not served by a dominant local marketplace or any of the big American ones. And also they have a propensity to use Google rather than go directly to a retailer site. And also among these top 10, the difference isn't really that big in terms of size. So you are going to see a wide distribution in terms of what countries you get your sales from. So quickly about how our business model works. So we charge a 15% commission across all categories, plus a 2.35% transaction fee. So or fund processing fee, which is basically what we have to pay the payment provider, be that PayPal or the MasterCard, whoever it is. Of that 15% commission, roughly half of that goes to paid advertising, predominantly Google, to drive traffic specifically to your products. So that goes into kind of your campaigns in the various countries where you're selling. And the process is similar to what you're used to from other marketplaces. Orders placed, you fulfill the order. After the statutory cooling off period, you get paid, and you get paid in your local currency every 2 weeks, and we send you an invoice so you can see what orders you just got paid for and what countries they were placed in. There's no additional fees for additional marketing or anything like that. That's all included in the commission. You don't pay anything for the FX fees or customer service or translation or anything like that. So we do have some requirements, so it may not be for everyone. And if we look at the list of requirements, obviously the first one is kind of why we're here. You absolutely have to have GTINs. So because we are so driven by search, we need to have unique identifiers for your products to be able to drive traffic to them. So that is an absolute requirement. Beyond that, you need to have good product data so that we can create successful campaigns for you. You need to be able to send us an automated feed in some form. That can be something you set up yourself. So you basically do manual integration to us as long as the feed is automated, or you can work with an integration partner to set that up. And we work with most of the major ones out there. Kind of a no-brainer, but you need to be able to ship abroad. Since we are a cross-border marketplace, you don't need to ship necessarily to every country, but we do require that you sell in at least 2 other countries than your native country. And you need to have products that are allowed by Google. So if we can't advertise them on Google, we can't sell them. So no guns or any other banned products. What helps you to be successful? Obviously, competitive pricing, having a large catalog where the products are in demand, and having good control of your shipping costs. So make sure you negotiate good terms with your couriers. So quick case study. So Argofield, they run a site called Price Right Home. They do kind of a home textile, home decoration, wallpaper, that kind of thing. And they had, if we look at the kind of the background, they were selling on marketplaces before. They were on eBay and Amazon in the UK, and were doing pretty well there. They were struggling on the international sites, mostly because it takes a lot of effort to not only list your products, but also you need to put effort into advertising and optimizing them for each country. And they had some international sales doing pretty well on their own site, but they still felt like they were missing kind of an opportunity globally. So what they did when they launched on Fruugo in July last year, and they came in with a kind of low expectations. They were hoping to do 10 orders a day from additional countries, and glad to say we were able to exceed their expectations. So by the end of the year, their average daily orders for 2019 were over 65. So that includes kind of ramping up from July. And at peak, they were getting over 250 international orders a day through Fruugo. So well beyond the 10 orders that they had set as a success criteria. So what did they have, kind of what did they see their success? So they did well in the English-speaking countries. So US and Australia showed up well. Switzerland, Netherlands did well as well. Turns out that the big winner, and this is not some Swedish, but Sweden was kind of the big winner for their international sales. Prior to launching on Fruugo, they'd had less than an order a day. And for the rest of the year, they had an average of 12 orders every day. And they ended up getting 3,000 orders out of Sweden in total for 2019 after launching in July. So the question is, what made them successful? They had good products, that certainly helps. They were trending, so they had products that were kind of in line with kind of the latest figures and be it films or whatever. They had good data, so they had good titles, rich descriptions, good images. Their pricing was competitive, and probably one of the major factors was that they had negotiated really good shipping terms with their couriers, so they could remain, even including the shipping, they could remain competitive globally. All right, so let's talk about COVID-19. So we're all kind of still in this, so I figured I'd share some observations of what we've seen in our platform. So first of all, explaining this graph, this is kind of a bar graph of our weekly orders over the last 6 years. So obviously it kind of illustrates the growth, but I think the interesting point here is the shape of the curve. So what you see year on year is that it starts out slowly after the holidays. Q1 actually drops off, and then it slowly picks up throughout the summer, and then you get this spike at the end of the year, which if you're in retail, you're familiar with this pattern, right? So 2020 has kind of broken the mold. So this is what we've seen through week 18. I think we're in week 22 now. Basically, everything exploded. We've had Christmas for pretty much 2 months now. So, and what we've seen is obviously this started when Europe started locking down, and including the UK. So we've been above peak last year for, well, since tail end of March, really. And since countries have started easing up on the restrictions, we've seen this come down somewhat, but it's still at a very, very high level. So obviously we've seen all sorts of predictions about what's going to happen when we return to something similar to normal. I don't expect that we will return to the levels that we would have predicted prior to this. I think there's going to be a fundamental shift in consumer behavior where people have gotten used to buying things online that they probably wouldn't have before this all happened. So again, it remains to be seen, but what we're seeing is that volumes are coming down, but not anywhere near where we had predicted them to be a few months before this. All right, so let's kind of take a look at how the demand through that spike period evolved. So first thing that happened, obviously, was people had the kind of the panic buying products. So we sold a lot of hand sanitizer, not just a nice little bottle, but people were buying it by the 5-liter jugs, a lot of face masks, obviously, and a lot of toilet paper. Then kind of as the reality started to set in and people figured out that they're going to be at home for a while, a lot of us shifted to working from home, in many cases for the first time. So we sold a lot of kind of peripherals to screens, external keyboards, that kind of thing, as people were setting up their home offices. And people also started looking after their health, especially since they obviously couldn't go to the gym. So a lot of home exercise equipment, a lot of vitamins and supplements and things like that. And then as time moved on, people started kind of realizing they had to do some things for themselves that they couldn't get done. So we sold a lot of hair coloring, clippers, as people started cutting their hair. I don't know about you, but I've seen some pretty bad haircuts on social media. So that definitely was a big spike. Also, people started sewing. So we've seen an increase in sales of sewing accessories. I think to a large extent, people are making face masks, but you need to get deeper into the data of that. Also, people have started baking a lot more since it's hard to find flour still. People started buying flour online, which I'm sure very few people did before this. And then kind of as we moved into the Easter period and beyond, obviously the weather in the UK and Europe has been really nice. And we've seen a shift to a lot of kind of garden outdoor type of equipment. So be that garden hoses, we had a spike in inflatable swimming pools. There's also flea and worm medicine for pets. And since people can't go to the vet or haven't been able to, we sold a lot of things like tick collars and things like that. So the pet category did really well. And one little anecdote to illustrate the importance of having your products available as widely as possible. So this is Professor Peter van der Voort on May 1st, he was on TV in the Netherlands and made this statement about a supplement called resveratrol that possibly could help to some extent improve the treatment of COVID-19 patients. Not really a cure or a particularly strong statement of support, but what happened was the Dutch viewers all picked up their phones, presumably, and started Googling resveratrol and bought everything they could find. So, and because we are obviously available at Fruugo.nl, what happened was that a lot of people found Fruugo and they bought products from us, and the impact for our sellers was an immediate spike in sales in the Netherlands. So we had, I think, 5 sellers that saw significant increases in sales of this antioxidant. None of them were based in the Netherlands. So the point of that is, if they if they hadn't been listed on Fruugo, they probably wouldn't even have known about this sudden increase in demand for their products, and they certainly wouldn't have benefited from it. So again, that's kind of the point of, you have to be in it to win it. And what we've seen from retailers and how they're reacting is that they are definitely adapting to this new shift to online by looking for more channels. So what you're seeing here is the change in signups for Fruugo for sellers who go to sell.fruugo.com to register. And so in April, we more than doubled what we did in April last year. And this was from the 18th. And at this point, we've doubled May as well. So clearly sellers are looking for new channels, and they are quickly trying to readjust their strategy to be available in as many channels as possible. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Lorna to see if we have any questions that we need to address.
Thank you, Håkan. That was great. There were some really interesting bits there, especially the 114% growth year on year. That is amazing for you guys, keeping you busy. We do have some questions, actually. Let's have a look. What have we got? So we've got one from Sarah. She's saying, given the Brexit uncertainty, oh, the B word, haven't heard that for a while. Is it still a good
moved
time?
on to C, yeah.
Yeah, we have, yeah. A, B, C. We're working through the alphabet. I'm sure the B word will make a comeback at the end of this. Given the Brexit uncertainty, is it still a good time to expand cross-border?
I'd say even more so. Kind of the last point illustrates that, I think, is that in terms of uncertainty, you need to diversify so that you don't put all your eggs in a basket. And I think what we offer is the ability to be present in multiple markets and access more opportunity.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, for sure. That leads nicely on to the next one, actually. Do I have to list in all of the countries?
You don't. Obviously, I mean, generally speaking, the more countries, the higher your odds of selling. But we certainly understand that there are some products that really don't ship well for long distances. If you sell garden furniture, New Zealand is probably not going to be the best market for you. We do require that you ship to 2 other countries than your own country. So if you're a UK seller, even if you just do Ireland and France, that's something that pretty much any product category should be able to handle.
So you can literally just tick them one by one as to which ones you can fulfill to?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Perfect.
But I would say in general, if you can sell, if your products are small enough to ship globally, then why not?
Great. Yeah, that makes sense. So this one says, which country do you think would be a good one to get a first mover's advantage on? I'm fed up of the high level of competition for the usual suspects.
Yeah, no, it's it is rough in the major markets. Like I said with that pie graph, Nordics do really well for us. The Nordics are interesting in that they have high purchasing power and they are kind of underserved by marketplaces. So they're used to shopping abroad or buying from foreign marketplaces. So it's an easy one to get into, and you don't yet have the competition from the big giants. Switzerland works well for us because it's a complicated market to sell into. And again, while there are some local marketplaces, they're not as dominant as some of the other ones. But again, I would say launch in as many as you can and kind of see what works for you. It may end up being Sweden, it may end up being Israel. I honestly don't know.
That makes sense. And I guess the Nordics probably have a fairly similar, apart from the temperature difference in the winter, they probably have a fairly similar product demand to what the UK, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say that the profile of the year looks similar. One thing I went through kind of comparing, the one thing that stands out as being different is back to school. So if you're a UK seller, you're not used to the spike in kids apparel that you get outside of the countries where they don't have school uniforms. So
Okay.
in Nordics, come August, you basically buy a new wardrobe for the rest of the year for your kids. So you're going to see, if you're in that category, you're going to see more of a spike in those countries than you would in the UK.
Okay, so kids' clothing for the autumn and winter setup is really key for those guys then. Okay, that's a great tip. Okay, we've got another one. Let's have a quick look. Who's this from? Can't see your name at the moment. Give me 1 second. But it says, I have a very small business with only 6 products. Is there a minimum you need to be able to sell on your site?
I mean, we typically would look for more than that because it's, I mean, it depends on the products. Ultimately, it's like if there's a demand for your 6 products that's significant enough that we can drive traffic to it, then we can probably make it worthwhile. But we would need to look at it. I mean, usually we would like to see a catalog that's in the hundreds at least. But then again, there are some brands that have a handful of products that do incredibly well. So it's on a case-by-case basis. But you know, the bigger catalog, the better. But we can certainly look at it.
Great. And just a follow-up one to that. Oh, it's from Alan. Do you have to register for VAT in the countries that you're selling for if you are below the threshold in that country?
No, not if you're below the threshold. Obviously, the monitoring of that threshold ultimately is up to you. We can provide you with details of what you've sold through Fruugo on each of those, but ultimately you probably will have sales through other channels as well, and it's your responsibility to look at your total sales and keep under that threshold or register if you go over it.
Yeah, makes sense. We've got a couple of guys that friends of GS1 UK that can help with more information on that if anybody needs help with that. And I think we've got one more here at the moment. What categories are selling really well on Fruugo? Obviously, I know that you talked through the ones that you've seen through COVID, but typically, what would you see as your big categories?
So, broadly speaking, Fruugo's kind of distribution of where we sell looks like e-commerce in general. So, apparel is probably the biggest category. We do a fair bit in tech. Sporting goods is big as well. But what I would say is your category doesn't necessarily matter as much on Fruugo as it might on other marketplaces, because people don't go to Fruugo to find stuff. They go to probably Google to find something, and then they find it via Google on Fruugo. So it's more about, is your product in demand? And is it something that we can find buyers for? And if it's in demand, then it doesn't really matter what product category it's in. We can still drive sales for your products. But broadly speaking, we look like kind of e-commerce in general.
That makes sense, yeah. So it's you're not kind of penned in by a niche that the likes of Newegg would be. That
No.
it's only the tech guys that go there because they're using a general search and then using you as the platform to check out.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I've got one more actually. So I'm a small one-man band. Is there a point that I need to grow the business for before I can look to start selling abroad? I'm nervous that I don't have the skills or resources yet. Quite a generalist one, but have you got any advice for that, do you think?
I would say, I mean, we can offer you an easy way of kind of trying it out. We're probably not going to double your sales without knowing your product category or anything like that, or the potency of your product is hard to say. But if you want to try it out, Fruugo is probably the lowest effort way of doing that. So it's hard to say like what your workload or sales volume is, but I think Fruugo can offer you a way of trying out the demand for your products internationally and see if that kind of justifies adding more staff to support further sales.
Yeah, I guess the translations and the currency conversion is probably the trickiest bit people find, and if you're looking after that bit, then that's a lot of it solved, isn't it?
Yep.
And
yep.
do you have the flexibility of kind of going on a holiday mode if it all gets a bit too, well, obviously a good problem to have, but if it gets too many sales and you need a breather kind of thing?
Yeah, so you can contact your account managers, and there are a couple of things we can do if it gets overwhelming, and I mean, it certainly has in these times, but what we can do is not bid on your products so that you don't receive as much traffic to your products, and that will dial the sales way back. Or if you want to, we can completely remove the products. We'll stop it entirely. But we can work with you to manage that.
Yeah, always a good problem to have, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that's it for questions actually. So right. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much. So thanks for everyone to join us and sharing all your questions. Big thank you to Håkan, obviously, for a really great session there. I hope we've had some great tips that you can implement into your own business. And if you want to hear any more from Håkan, you can find him on the usual social channels, where links are going to be available on our website and also in the follow-up email alongside a recording of this webinar. We have a few more webinars still to come in this series, the titles of which are on the screen now. And you will also include a link to the webinars in our follow-up email too. So one last thing before we leave and let you get on with your online selling, let us know some feedback for the session and also what results that you get after using some of the tips today. Obviously, if you have any queries for us here at GS1 UK, please do get in touch. You can contact us, so the engagement managers, or obviously our member support team are there too. And thank you. Basically, have a good day and see you all hopefully for the next session. Thanks, Håkan.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon. Bye, everybody.